My cheating wife and her entitled, abusive mother spent 6 months plotting to ruin my life. They wanted to drain my bank accounts, kick me out of my own house, and get my wife's new boyfriend a top executive job at my corporate office. They laughed at me behind my back, calling me a pathetic, broke loser who was too blind to see what was happening. They thought they had won the game. But they missed one tiny, catastrophic detail. I wasn't a middle management employee. I was the anonymous multi-billionaire founder of the entire corporation. And worst of all for them, I secretly owned the house they lived in, the apartment her boyfriend rented, and the bank that held all their debt. My name is David, and this is how I evicted, fired, and legally destroyed my cheating wife and her entire toxic family in exactly 60 seconds at her mother's birthday dinner. I met Sarah 5 years ago when I was wearing a cheap suit at a coffee shop. I fell for her instantly. At the time, I had just sold my first tech startup for $50 million, and I was in the process of building a massive real estate and logistics empire through a blind trust. But I didn't tell Sarah that. I wanted a woman who loved me for who I was, not for my bank account. So, I told her I was a mid-level data analyst making $60,000 a year. We got married. I bought a beautiful 4-bedroom house, telling her it was entirely financed through a lucky mortgage rate. But the honeymoon phase didn't last. Once there was a ring on her finger, Sarah's true colors showed. And worse, she brought her mother, Karen, into our lives. Karen was the ultimate entitled monster. She drove a leased Mercedes she couldn't afford, wore fake Gucci, and constantly belittled me. David, look at the neighbor's husband, Karen sneered one evening at our dinner table, sipping the expensive wine I had secretly paid for. He's a partner at a law firm. What are you? A keyboard puncher. Sarah could have married a doctor, but she settled for mediocrity. Sarah didn't defend me. She just sighed and rolled her eyes. Mom's right, David. You have zero ambition. It's honestly embarrassing when my friends ask what you do. I swallowed my anger and smiled. I provide for us, Sarah. We have a nice life. A nice life? Sarah scoffed. I want a luxury life. But I guess I can't expect a peasant to build a castle. I played the role of the quiet, beaten-down husband. But behind my fake $40 watch and cheap Honda Civic, I was managing a $400 million portfolio. I owned commercial skyscrapers, luxury apartment complexes, and a tech firm with 2,000 employees. I was waiting for the right moment to tell her the truth. I was waiting for her to prove she loved me despite the money. Instead, she proved she was a monster. The betrayal unraveled on a Tuesday. I was supposed to be at a week-long data conference in Seattle. Instead, my private wealth manager finished our meetings early, so I flew back home to surprise Sarah. I quietly unlocked the front door of our house. The lights were off, but I heard loud music coming from the backyard patio. I walked through the dark kitchen and looked out the glass doors. Sarah was sitting on the lap of a tall, muscular guy with a slick haircut. They were drinking champagne. And sitting right across from them at the patio table was Karen, my mother-in-law, laughing and raising her glass. To Mark. Karen cheered. The man my daughter actually deserves. I hit record on my phone, standing in the shadows. I can't believe David actually bought the Seattle conference excuse, the guy, Mark, laughed. The guy is a complete idiot. He's useful though, Sarah said, kissing Mark's neck. He pays the mortgage. But we're almost ready to execute the plan. Mom talked to her lawyer. Since David bought the house after we were married, I'm entitled to half. I've been secretly moving cash from his checking account into my private savings for 6 months. And what about the job? Mark asked, grinning. That's the best part, Sarah smiled wickedly. David's company is hiring a new senior vice president of operations. David's just a low-level analyst there, but he gave me the internal hiring manager's email. I submitted your resume, Mark. Once you get that executive job making $250,000 a year, you can literally be David's boss. You can fire him, and then I'll serve him the divorce papers. We take his house, his job, and his money. They all burst into cruel laughter. I stood in the dark kitchen, feeling my heart physically break. My wife wasn't just cheating on me. Her own mother was encouraging it. They were actively plotting to make me unemployed and homeless, so she could move her lover into my house and make him my boss. I didn't storm outside. I didn't break the glass. I silently walked back out the front door, got into my car, and drove to a luxury hotel downtown. I ordered a $200 bottle of scotch, opened my laptop, and went to war. They thought I was a mid-level analyst at Vanguard Logistics. What Sarah didn't know was that Vanguard Logistics was a subsidiary of a massive holding company. A holding company that I 100% owned. I picked up the phone and called the global CEO of Vanguard, a man named Richard who reported directly to me. Richard, I said coldly. We have an applicant for the SVP of Operations role. A man named Mark Sterling. I want you to hire him immediately. Right away, sir, Richard replied. Is he a top-tier candidate? No, I said. He's an idiot. Offer him $300,000 a year. Give him a massive signing bonus, but structure the contract so that if he is terminated with cause within the first 90 days, he has to pay back the bonus with 20% interest. Understood, sir. Next, I looked up Mark Sterling's home address. He lived in a high-end luxury apartment building called The Pinnacle. I smiled. The Pinnacle was managed by a real estate group that I had acquired 3 years ago. I owned his roof. Over the next 3 months, I played the ultimate fool. I came home every day acting exhausted. I let Karen come over and insult my clothes. I let Sarah pull away from me in bed, claiming she had migraines. Meanwhile, Mark got the job. He was hired as the SVP of Operations. Sarah was ecstatic. She bought a new designer handbag to celebrate, using the money she was secretly stealing from my account. Mark came into the office on his first day acting like a king. Because I was just an analyst, he made it his mission to humiliate me. He would drop massive stacks of paperwork on my desk at 4:55 p.m. on Fridays. Get this sorted by Monday, Dave, Mark smirked, leaning on my cubicle. Or maybe I'll have to find an analyst who actually wants to work. I hear your wife likes a man with ambition. Clearly, you don't have any. I just nodded, staring at the screen. I'll get it done, sir. He walked away laughing. He didn't realize that the paperwork he handed me was his own departmental budget, which I was currently using to legally build a case of gross financial negligence against him. The trap was fully set. I just needed the perfect stage to execute them. That stage presented itself perfectly, Karen's 60th birthday dinner. Karen rented out a private room at the most expensive steakhouse in the city. She invited the entire extended family, about 40 people. Aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone who had spent the last 5 years treating me like a pathetic loser because Karen told them I was poor. I arrived at the restaurant wearing a cheap, slightly wrinkled suit. Sarah immediately glared at me. Could you look any more embarrassing, she hissed. I tried my best, honey, I said softly. We sat down. The champagne flowed. Towards the end of the dinner, Karen stood up and clinked her glass. Thank you all for coming. Karen beamed, draped in the jewelry Sarah bought her with my stolen money. This year has been amazing. Especially because my beautiful daughter, Sarah, is finally taking control of her life. In fact, she has a very special guest she wants to introduce to the family tonight. The doors to the private dining room opened. In walked Mark, wearing a tailored Italian suit, holding a massive bouquet of roses. The family gasped. Sarah stood up, walked over to Mark, and kissed him passionately on the lips right in front of me and the entire family. A few aunts looked shocked, but Karen just clapped. Sarah turned to me, a venomous smile on her face. David, this is Mark. He's the new senior VP at your company. He's also my new partner. I am filing for divorce tomorrow. You have 30 days to pack your cheap clothes and get out of my house. Mark is moving in. Mark smirked, crossing his arms. And Dave? Don't bother coming into the office on Monday. As your boss, I'm officially terminating your employment. You're fired. Pack your desk. The room was dead silent. My wife and my boss had just publicly humiliated me, fired me, and dumped me in one breath. I slowly stood up from my chair. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I reached into my cheap suit jacket and pulled out a thick black folder. Sarah, I said, my voice echoing in the quiet room. You want the house? That's funny. Because according to the deed, the house isn't in my name. It's owned by a corporate trust. A trust that I fully control. You aren't entitled to a single brick of that house. But you know what you are entitled to. I tossed a document onto the table. A felony charge for embezzlement. I've been tracking the $85,000 you secretly transferred from my checking account to yours. The police have the bank logs. Sarah's smug smile vanished. She turned ghost white. What? A corporate trust. You're just an analyst. I am the founder and sole owner of Vanguard Logistics, I said coldly. Mark burst out laughing, though it sounded nervous. You're insane. Richard is the CEO. Richard works for me, Mark, I said, pulling out a second document. And speaking of work, you aren't just fired. You're being sued. Remember that $100,000 signing bonus you took? The contract stated if you were fired for gross negligence, you owe it back with 20% interest. My auditors found you expensing luxury dinners with Sarah on the company card. That's corporate fraud. You owe me $120,000, payable immediately. Mark stumbled backward, his face turning gray. No, Richard hired me. I hired you, Mark, I smiled. I designed your contract. I engineered your downfall. Oh, and one more thing. I pulled out the final document. It was a formal eviction notice. Mark, you live in penthouse 4B at the Pinnacle, correct? I own that building. You have 24 hours to vacate the premises due to violation of the moral turpitude clause in your lease. I turned to Karen, who was hyperventilating in her chair. Happy 60th birthday, Karen, I said, dropping the final piece of paper in front of her. I also bought the debt collection agency that holds the title to your leased Mercedes. They'll be repossessing it tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Enjoy taking the bus. The silence in the restaurant was absolute. The entire family stared at Sarah, Karen, and Mark in pure horror. Sarah dropped to her knees, crying hysterically. David, please. We can fix this. I didn't mean it. I love you. I looked down at her. You loved the idea of ruining a peasant. Unfortunately for you, you picked a fight with a king. I walked out of the restaurant, leaving the black folder on the table. Behind me, the sound of Mark and Sarah screaming at each other erupted, followed by Karen sobbing. The destruction was total and absolute. Mark couldn't pay back the $120,000. I sued him into personal bankruptcy. He lost his luxury apartment, his credit score was destroyed, and because of the corporate fraud charges, he is permanently blacklisted from working in the tech industry. He now works night shifts at a warehouse. Karen's car was repossessed the very next day. Without my hidden financial support, she defaulted on her credit cards and had to move into a tiny, run-down studio apartment. As for Sarah, she avoided prison by pleading guilty and returning every penny she stole, but she was left with absolutely nothing. No house. No money. No wealthy husband. The last I heard, she was working double shifts at a diner to pay off her legal fees. I sold the house, liquidated a few assets, and took a 3-month vacation on my private yacht in the Mediterranean. People think that the best revenge is living well. They're wrong. The best revenge is letting toxic, entitled people dig their own graves, handing them a golden shovel, and then burying them alive in their own greed.